Ritchie's grandmother's favourite song. That's, I think, what the received wisdom is on that. However, it did appear, and it did seem like a good name for the band. We didn't have any meaning behind it. We didn't know, for example, that it was the name of a particular brand of acid that was being sold in the States at the time. We didn't know that, I swear. You know, it was we weren't a drug band. We were a sort of pint of bitter Scotch and Coke sort of band. I'd been a professional musician, I suppose, 2 or 3 years, maybe longer, 4. And I met a guy who was the drummer with the Searchers. I remember the Searchers, one of the early sort of Mersey beat type bands, although they were from Manchester, I think, but anyway. And this guy was called Chris Curtis, and he was introduced to me, and it was 1967, and it was very 60s by then. You know, a lot of caftans and bells and beads and all sorts, and I had them all, of course. And it was a gorgeous summer, I remember, delightful. And his idea was that we were going to have this band called Roundabout, and it would have a nucleus of him and myself. He was the drummer and singer, and myself on keyboards, and this great guitarist, quote unquote, that he'd found in Hamburg, called Richie Blackmore, who was then playing in a band called the Three Musketeers.
My fondest memories might have been in '65 when I used to play in a band called the Three Musketeers in Germany, and we used to dress up as musketeers and jump on stage, sword fencing and things like this. And that was a very good band, but we didn't really do much work. I think we worked once a year.
Then Chris Curtis disappeared. No one at the time knew where he'd gone. I mean, I think certain substances might have had something to do with it, you know, like LSD and all these wonderful things that were available in the 60s. And I thought, oh, well, that was that. You know, it was nice while it lasted, blah, blah, carry on, trying to earn my living as a session musician. I then got a telegram from this guy, Tony Edwards. If you're still interested in forming a band, would still be interested in backing said band, please call, whatever. I mean, I thought, thank you, you know. So I called him, and he had no idea at all of what he wanted, only that he wanted to do it. And he called Richie, and Richie came over in the December of '67. We certainly hit it off musically straight away. You know, I remember he had an acoustic guitar, which he played me some ideas that he'd had, and I had this little tiny electric piano, and I joined in, and we messed around for several hours, wrote 2 or 3 numbers which actually ended up on the first album that we did, and decided that, yes, we would do it. But we had a bass player called Nick Simper, who had been playing in the band that I was playing in at the time, which was the backing band for the Flower Pot Men.
I was in a band, we were playing in Hamburg, had a 3-week crazy stint at the Star Club there. And Richie at that time was living in Hamburg. He obviously liked the way I played. He came and said, you know, nice work. And then when we finished the job, he was still living in Hamburg, I went back to England with my band. And about a year after that, the singer in my band, who was Rod Evans, applied for the singing job in this new band, which was to become Deep Purple. And Richie remembered me from the year ago in Hamburg and said, you still got the drummer? And I said, yeah, so bring him along.
The Purple sound was at the very beginning, and still is, a combination of Richie's guitar work and John's keyboard work with Ian's drumming feel. That, I mean, you can always tell that it's pacing on drums, which is very unusual because drummers don't usually have a feel, with the exception of Bonham, that's theirs. And Ian very much has a sound that's his, and of course Richie, as we all know, has a sound that's his. And the combination of Richie's sound and John's organ, with the rhythm being kept by Ian, is the Deep Purple sound.
Rod Evans was he was a little bit Tom Jones, a little bit Engelbert Humperdinck, you know. But we beat him into shape, and that was and there we had our first band. Joe South wrote Hush, but there was I think a guy called Billy Joe Royal had the hit in the States with Hush, a minor hit, and it was being played in a lot of the dance clubs and disco type things in England, and we'd heard it and liked it, and so we did a version of it, which had that sort of long organ solo in it, and to our astonishment, it went in top 10 in the States.
She's on my mind. No doubt about it, she looks so bad. She's the best girl that I've ever had. Sometimes she's gonna make me feel so bad. Listen, hush, hush. I thought I heard her calling my name. Hush, she broke my heart, but I love you just the same. Now hush, hush, thought I heard her calling my name. Now hush, hush, I need her loving and I'm not to blame. Now, oh, in the morning, in the evening, oh, every day, everybody gotta have it. It happened so quick. We were all sort of taken unawares by it. Because at this time we were still working back in England, you know, we were starting to do shows on the road, some not very big, some a little bigger. But all of a sudden we'd been told that Hush had been chosen as a single in the States and boom, it was a top 5 hit. So of course everybody then starts planning for a big tour over here. And it was a great first time in the States. I mean, we flew direct from London to Los Angeles. And there we are in you know, entertainment capital of the world. And there's these great big Cadillac limousines, which we've only seen in the movies before, picking us up. And the same night we get taken to Hefner's penthouse pad in the Strip, and hey, we're here, and we're arrived.
In 1968, when we started playing, we were copying Vanilla Fudge. I don't know if you know the band. They were from Long Island. And that was the type of music we wanted to play. Heavy organ, Hendrix type of music. And funnily enough, they liked us. They thought that we were kind of innovators, and we were just copying them. So it's amazing what you can do and get away with and get paid for it. So that's how we started, really.
Ritchie was more and more getting towards what would become hard rock, is what he wanted. And I think when he heard Hendrix, it was a pretty big moment for him. Started to move towards more what Ritchie saw. It was quite evident that Rod and Nicky were not the singer and bass player who could help us get there.
Ian Gillan and I were in a band called Episode 6. He'd been in the band since '65. And '69 came around, and we had a couple of different drummers. One of them was a guy called Mick Underwood. Mick Underwood used to be in a band with Ritchie. years before that called The Outlaws. And I'd never heard of Deep Purple, although they had Hush in the States. They didn't mean anything in England, and I'd never heard of them. And Mick got a call one day from Ritchie Blackmore. Said he was looking for a singer. Did he know any singers? And possibly a bass player. And so Mick said, well, when you come and listen to our band, you know, we've got a singer you might be interested in. So we played Woodford Green, and Ritchie and John Lord showed up. Woodford Green, it was a boys' club. It was a tiny little Boy Scouts hall, I think it was. I don't remember much about it. Ritchie did get up and have a jam, although I never met either of them that night. And in fact, I didn't like the look of them. I thought they were kind of dodgy-looking characters. They were very dark and hair, and they all had expensive clothes on, which to me was a sign of not one of us, you know. We were pretty broke. The upshot of it was that they offered Ian the gig, and it caused pandemonium in our camp, in the Episode 6 camp, so we're losing our lead singer. About 2 weeks later, Ian called me up. Now, I'd been songwriting for years. I've always been a songwriter. And I'd got Ian to join me in songwriting, so we became a partnership for the last 18 months to 2 years of Episode 6's life. And he called me up and said, listen, we got some songs. Deep Purple needs songs. I'm going to go down to John Lord's flat to play him some songs. Do you want to come along? I said, yeah, OK. Got my guitar. We started writing in Hanwell Community Centre outside London. It was a big, empty gymnasium, horrible sound, horrible echo. And I remember the first rehearsal we did, Ritchie started playing Jimi Hendrix's Let Me Stand Next to Your Fire. And he said, wouldn't it be good if we had a riff that was short and had words in between like that? And I just started playing. The first thing came into my head, and it turned out to be what ended up as Speed King.
I have to say that I think the prime mover behind Purple's music all these years has been Ritchie Blackmore. He almost invariably is the one that comes up with the kernel of an idea, you know, the little spark, the little riff that everyone goes, oh, that's good, let's work on that.
wasn't any one song, it was the whole album came out in a much harder vein than even we could have imagined it would have been, because that was Deep Purple in rock. Every track on that album is a powerful statement about one thing or another, whether it had been a lyrical statement, anti-drugs, or whether it had been a musical statement with the virtuosity in the band.
Richie said that if it's not exciting or dramatic, it doesn't belong on the album. And this was also, we were doing gigs at the time, but it wasn't like now where you go in the studio and you do an album. In those days, you go and do a couple of days in the studio and then go out and on the road for a couple of days and mix and match all the time. And that's kind of good in a way, because it keeps you fresh. And I think that's what makes In Rock such an uncompromising album.
Sweet child in time, you'll see the line that's drawn between the good and the bad. See the flying man, yeah, he is shooting at the world, bullets flying, oh, they're taking toll. You have, and you've not been hit by flying lead. You better close your eyes, you'd better bow your head. Wait for the ricochet.
So Deep Purple in Rock came out and went huge, and it stayed in the charts for a year.
Right.
And we toured in the wake of that pretty extensively around Europe. It didn't happen in America. So we kind of forgot America for a while and concentrated on Europe. And then we did the follow-up album, Fireball. As an album, it didn't do anything like what Deep Purple in Rock had done. In fact, I remember going to Germany once, and they had expected it to be gold by the time we'd got there, and it wasn't. But they had all the presentation and the party all lined up, so they decided to go ahead with that anyway, and presented us with half a gold record, actually cut down the middle. I mean, we didn't know whether to laugh or whether to be insulted and walk away.
There once was a woman, a green kind of woman, the kind that gives a rhythm down in history. Her name was Nancy, her face was never fancy. She left the trail of happiness and misery. Everybody loved her. She left everyone and gave a good return. I tried to take her, I even tried to break her. She said, I hate to take her, won't you ever learn? I want you, I need you, I gotta hear you. I spent my money and I took my turn. I want you, I need you, I gotta be near you. Oh, got a strange kind of woman, yeah. Well, she finally said she loved me. I went in a hurry. No more callers and I closed and cried. I'm dreaming, I feel like screaming. Want my woman just before she died. I want you, I need you, I gotta be near you. I spent my money and I took my turn. I want you, I need you, I gotta be near you. Oh, yeah, a strange kind of woman. She was so evil. Can't believe it. All right.
Machine Head was a conscious effort by us to change the sound. We were thinking about live sounds, we always preferred the sound of the band live in a hall, in a theatre or whatever. And during the making of Fireball, we'd experimented with putting the drums in the corridor to get that sort of slapback sound. Studios were always padded, and it sounded very good for folk music, but rock didn't seem right. You know? So we took it one stage further, and we decided to go and record the entire album with a mobile studio in a theatre setting without the audience. So it would be like a live album, but we'd have the luxury of being able to redo songs if we didn't like them. So we looked around and we figured that we'd do it in Montreux, where the Casino was a regular gig, and any European tour, any self-respecting band would have played the Casino because it was part of the circuit. The day we got there, he said, "Oh, the last function before you take over the hall is a Frank Zappa concert. We'd like to see it." And we said, "Sure." So we went along. He made a little special seating section for us in the middle of the crowd. And we watched Frank Zappa for about an hour. And it was great. All I remember is bunches of people looking up at the ceiling and some sparks. There's a bamboo ceiling, like a false ceiling. And the music stopped. It didn't look like much at first, but the music stopped, and Frank was great. He said, went up to the microphone, he said, "I don't want to alarm anybody, and I don't want to cause any panic, but fire!" Within minutes, the building was an inferno. I mean, it was stunning, and certainly the most horrendous fire I've ever seen. It's a huge building. It was about, I guess, 10 or 12 stories high. It housed casinos, theatres, restaurants, bars. It was a huge complex. We retired back to the hotel we were staying at a little while down the coast, because it was right on Lake Geneva. It's a beautiful setting. And we just watched the fire. I mean, it raged for hours, all day. A huge pall of smoke hung over Lake Geneva. A couple of mornings after the fire, I woke up, eyes still closed, and said out loud, "Smoke on the water." And I sort of came awake with a bang. There's no one else in the room. I mean, who was I talking to? Sort of, I must have dreamed it or something. And I mentioned it to Ian the next day, or later that day. I said, "It sounds like a song title came to me this morning. Smoke on the Water." He said, "Sounds like a drug song." I said, "Yeah, it does, doesn't it?" "Oh, well, it's not for Deep Purple. It doesn't sound like a Deep Purple song." And then a couple of days later, we had this riff with no lyrics. We always used to write like that. We used to write the music first, and then Ian and I would, put our heads together and figure out what we could sing over it. And so I think we were still reeling from the events of what had happened, the fire and everything. So I said, "Why don't we just write a song about what happened to us? Just put it exactly as is, don't make anything up." always remember arriving in Japan. Japanese audiences were very warm. They were very attentive. They sat, arms folded, very neat. And they didn't say much during the songs, but they erupted at the end of songs, which is unlike European audiences and American audiences, which just, you know, yell and scream throughout the whole thing. They listened a lot. The Japanese company said, we want to make a live album. And live albums in those days weren't the thing to do. You know, they were kind of, they had a budget kind of feel about them. So we said, well, we're not really interested in doing a live album, because especially since our shows are so haphazard and so spontaneous, that you have the danger of either having a brilliant show or a really awful show, which, you know, you're capable of if you play on the line like that, if you play kind of dangerously. You take chances. So they insisted that they wanted to do it, and we said, okay, we'll do it on certain conditions. That A, our engineer goes over to record it. That B, we bring the stuff back, we mix it, and if we don't like it, you don't put it out. If we don't like it, you don't put it out. And C, it only comes out in Japan. It doesn't come out anywhere else. And we recorded 3 concerts, 2 in Osaka and 1 in Tokyo. And most of the material from Made in Japan comes from the second night in Osaka. Because the first night, we were on stage like 4 puppets, you know, we're being recorded. But make sure I don't make any mistakes, you know. But by the second night, we'd kind of relaxed to it. And we got back to England, and a couple of weeks later, got in the studio to listen to these tapes. And we were, I mean, just bowled over by how good they were. And that became Made in Japan. Well, I think that really is probably the most important album for us, because although the record company were loath to release it because they wanted the new studio album, we said, yeah, but you know, it's the Machine Head tour. It's going to be released right after Machine Head, otherwise it's going to be out of date. We kind of forced their hand on it, and they eventually released it. Happily for them, because it went platinum. And it dragged Machine Head up with it. That went platinum. Smoke in the Water, the live version of Smoke in the Water is really what made Smoke in the Water happen. And to me, the